Hi, today we're going to talk a little bit about the gardener activity badge for the Beavers section. So essentially, what's going on here is that um, unlike the squirrels version of the activity badge here for gardening, the Beavers version is a little bit more to do with safety and tools, as well as actually taking the time to, for an extended period, helping to grow a garden or allotment and various things such as that. So this isn't a badge you can do in one night, officially at least. It's something that has to be done over a period of time. Um, it also includes an element of observation and dedication. So obviously looking after something and documenting its growth and making sure that it stays alive for a period of 2 months is quite a big commitment. But that kind of thing is usually a beaver's first introduction to the world of gardening. And if you know anything really about mental health, one of the best things you can do for mental health is going out into nature and touching natural things and things like that. So learning about gardening and its positive effects at a young age can be quite pivotal later in life. So I'm going to go through each of the requirements here and give you some links to other badges that they also relate to, including the Chief Scout's Bronze Award, hopefully. So starting off, we have find out what happens to trees in each of the 4 seasons. This is kind of self-contained for the most part. Usually people have an idea about when the seasons change what happens to the trees. It's not too um, pivotal, but it's worth mentioning that anything to do with natural things, uh, any activity including that, including this one, does count towards the My Outdoors Challenge Award for the Cheese Cats Bronze Award, so that's worth ticking off if you actually go out into the wild and look at trees yourself rather than pictures or something. That can be quite good. If you go on a ramble or a nature walk as part of this to visit a whole bunch of different trees, that can count as a ramble and nature walk for the My Adventure Challenge Award too. If you talk about how so this connects to the wider natural world rather than just trees, that can also apply to the My World Challenge Award there as well. So there's at least 3 different challenge awards just from this first action here that you do that can be contributed towards if you play this right. Next up we have learn what tools you need to garden and how to use some of the tools safely. I'd say use all the tools safely. If you're going to teach them how to use tools, teach them how to use them properly. Um, a lot of gardening tools tend to be pointed, but if you think about rakes, that's a very easy one to use. Um, I'm sure there are gardening gloves as well. A few other tools you can think of if you have an expert gardener on your leader team, as you might do. Learning any new skill can count for the My Skills Challenge Award, um, which is to learn 3 new skills, so it counts towards one of those. I would also debate the fact that gardening in of itself can keep you fit and healthy, sort of getting out there and doing physical work, especially if it's planting and things. So I would count that towards the other aspect of the My Skills Challenge Award, which is to do with staying fit and healthy, especially your mental health. I'd count that as well, um, which is a big part, as we mentioned, of gardening too. If you teach them new things that they didn't know before about plants during this process, that can also count for the My Skills challenge of finding out 5 new facts they didn't know before. Beyond that, um, if you didn't tick off the previously mentioned going into nature aspects that of the different challenge awards, um, there is, as I mentioned before, the My Outdoors Challenge awards going into nature and doing something naturally based that could apply to this second one too. Other than that, there's not too much else in terms of the challenge awards you can really touch on. Um, you could potentially link this a little bit into the Beavers safety activity badge, given this has to do with safety. But that activity badge is more to do with pointing out dangers around the home and how to call the emergency services. So you could point out the fact that if any of these tools are at their home, then they have to be sort of safe around them and not mess around with them. That would count towards an aspect of that safety activity badge. And you could throw in the knowledge of how to call the emergency services here in case someone got hurt by them. If, you know, your parent was outside gardening and hurt themselves, how to call emergency services. Number three, learn sort of what plants need to grow. This is your very basic chemistry, biology type stuff. Um, this can apply to, for example, the experiment activity badge potentially. If you do the classic experiment of putting a plant in a cupboard for a week and putting a plant in light for a week, you can show how the one in the cupboard actually grows taller because it's trying to find light, but it looks more sickly because it doesn't have the energy to actually sustain itself. Um, Whereas the one that's inside the light is much more healthy looking but is shorter because it is exactly where it needs to be to get light. It's a good example of an experiment you can sort of put in there as well. Um, Beyond that, if we think a bit more towards the Chief Scout's Bronze Award again, finding out new facts, as we mentioned, is part of the skills challenge. Although, other than that, I don't see many other links we can make with that one. The fourth requirement here, help look after a garden or allotment for 2 months. This is the main sort of meat of the activity badge here. A little bit more difficult to do, but given that you're a leader, you should be able to plan around this for a long, well, quote unquote, a long period of time. 2 months really isn't that long, especially given half terms and breaks and holidays and things. Um, and there's a very, very high likelihood that somewhere nearby your meeting place there is a garden or allotment that's probably neglected and underused. No one would mind you helping out with a bit. Um, I'd even go so far as to say it's better to ask forgiveness than permission on that one, because if there is something that is clearly supposed to look good and is a garden of some kind or a flower display, and it's just gone to the wayside, picking that up, I don't think anyone's going to complain about that. I think you'd take more time actually trying to get approval to do that than, you know, it's worth. It says here alternatively you can grow at least 3 different plants in pots and look after them for 2 months instead. Um, if you that's you know if you're in a particularly urban environment and there really isn't anywhere nearby that is green space or soil space, then you can buy some pots and do that. There's a few different ways you can go about this. You could um, rotate these plants between different beavers and their parents. You could perhaps, if there are multiple sections on different nights at your hut, team up with, for example, cubs or squirrels because they have similar badges to do with looking after plants. And on their nights they can look after the plant, on your nights you can look after them, um, and that way you can all move towards your nature theme badges at the same time with relatively little effort. Just a bit of messaging in the group chat between leaders. In terms of what this can count towards, I'd say this counts as part of the teamwork challenge award. Sorry, as part of the Chief Scouts Bronze Award. I'd say this counts as a challenge in of itself to keep these plants alive for 2 months. Big bit of teamwork there, which would count towards it. And I'd say that this also shows that the person who is looking after the plants is a helpful team member. So you can tick off 2 parts of that challenge award as far as I'm concerned there. And of course, the points we mentioned up here about doing activity with natural things would also count for this one too. Obviously, plants are natural things, and helping them grow is doing natural things as well. If you want to do this on an individual basis, if there's one particular beaver who wants to do this and doing it as a group is a little bit more difficult, you could set this as a beaver's personal challenge and give them a plant to look after for 2 months and sort of record and log their progress to show to you. And I'd say that would count as a personal challenge in terms of the Beaver's Personal Challenge Award, which is one of the aspects of the Chief Scouts Bronze Award too. If you perhaps use this looking after of things to teach some kind of moral lesson, you might be able to link it into the My World Challenge Award, which has an aspect of doing something reflective with reflection, or worship or celebration of some kind. I'd say that in this case it's more of a secular matter than any individual religion, unless you happen to have druids or something in your beaver group, at which point, go for it, obviously. There's actually other aspects of things in the My World Challenge Award that can be counted here too. I'd count this as an activity that helps local community, really. So that would count off for this too. Additionally, there's also an aspect of the My World Challenge Award that is to do with learning about the natural world, and doing this actively, I'd say, would be a large enough thing to tick that off too. And at the very bottom here, it says keep a record of what you've done and what changes you see. Really, any activity badge that has a time period, I would highly suggest you have them keep a log. Otherwise, it's very difficult to know who actually did it and who didn't bother. And obviously, you can take beavers at their word a bit, but beavers and anyone in the Scouts section, sort of youth membership, they talk about their awards and their activity badges and things, and if they realise that someone's done very little and still got their badge, it can cause some people to get a little bit annoyed, at least for a little while, about that. So own discretion on that one. It says here draw pictures, write short sentences, and take photographs. This actually joins into a number of different activity badges, believe it or not. So drawing pictures can count towards the creative activity badge, which has several aspects of things which are to do with drawing still life and things like that. So obviously plants are part of that still life art style. Additionally, if we think a little bit more towards the taking photographs part, there is the photographer activity badge 2 as well. And writing short sentences, I'm not sure really what we can tie that into, if anything. You could again try and make this some type of experiment themed activity, at which point it would count towards the experiment activity badge. Beyond that, I think that's everything really that I have in terms of advice. Just to add, I'd use something like cress. Cress is a very good way to grow something in a reduced period of time and have pretty obvious results, being it grows very quickly in very simple conditions. You can buy online kits to do with growing cress seeds and things like that, or you can figure that out yourself, obviously. That's about everything for now, though. Hopefully that's been useful. Thanks. Bye bye.